Okay, here is a crazy statistic. Did you know that a researcher could watch you and your partner have a disagreement for 3 minutes and then be able to tell you what the outcome of that argument will be? Isn't that nuts? So today I want to talk to you about how researchers can predict the outcome of a disagreement and then what you can do to control the outcome of your own disagreements in your own relationship. Okay, it's true. Researchers really can predict the outcome of disagreements, of fights, of arguments. It's crazy how they do it, but it all goes back to the research. So, one of the most famous researchers in the marriage space, you'll hear his name all the time on my channel. His name is Dr. John Gottman, and he has pointed out some research that shows that the way a conflict conversation, a disagreement begins, impacts with a 96% accuracy the way that conflict conversation will end. So, what I mean by that is, excuse me, if you start off the conflict conversation, a disagreement, with hostility, with impatience, with anger, with a hot temper, with accusations, with all of that negative energy, the likelihood of there being a positive outcome is pretty much zero. However, if you start off a conflict conversation with some generosity, with some kindness, with some humility, with some gratitude, some humor, the likelihood of that conversation going in a positive direction and ending in the way that you probably want it to is much, much higher. So that's what researchers look for when they're studying people in conflict. They're looking for specific things that couples do to start the conversation, because that the way that you start, the trajectory that you start that conversation determines the outcome. Now, Dr. John Gottman has put together a series of steps, things that we can do to maximize the likelihood that the outcome of any sort of disagreement or conflict conversation will be as positive as possible. And they call it, the Gottman Institute calls it the soft startup. And that is what we are going to talk about today. I'm really excited to talk to you about it because this is one of those skills that, if you master it, will definitely have a massive impact on the long-term quality of your relationship, and it will minimize the amount of damage that can be done to your relationship because of a difference of opinions or a conflict of values or any other thing that might cause a fight. So I'm going to walk you through some of the steps to a soft startup and hopefully equip you with the skills and tools that you need to make sure that you have the highest likelihood of a positive outcome whenever you're having a disagreement with your partner. So the first thing I want you to think about doing when you need to have a conversation that might be emotionally charged with your partner is ask for permission. So I've got an example I want to share with you. Back when I was dating my wife, this is an embarrassing story, but I think it illustrates the point really well. So I was self-employed. I had not had insurance for quite a long time, and that includes dental insurance. And so I hadn't been to the dentist, and my teeth were not in great shape. And my wife and I had been dating for a couple of months, and things were getting pretty serious. And she came over to my house one day, and she said, "Can I talk to you about something that I'm really scared to bring up? It makes me really nervous. Like, I really don't want to hurt your feelings, but I feel like we need to talk about something." And I was like, "Oh, she's never talked to me like this before." I was kind of like bracing myself. And she goes, "I just want to talk to you about your breath." And she pulled out a toothbrush and a tongue scraper, and she's like, "I'm really sorry to bring this up, but it's not all the time, but sometimes when we kiss, like, I can smell your breath, and it's not great. It's kind of a turn off, and I want to not be turned off when I kiss you. And so I just wanted to talk about some oral hygiene stuff and see if we could kind of level that up for you." And I was mortified, but I was so grateful that she brought it up in a compassionate and non-judgmental way, and that she gave me a little bit of warning that something uncomfortable was coming up. And we ended up handling the conversation really well, and I was very grateful that she had the conversation with me instead of just breaking up with me because I had stinky breath. And we have since remedied the situation. Very grateful for that. But that one little thing can make a huge difference. If your partner's had a really stressful day, if they just heard some bad news, if they're in the middle of a big project, if they just got home from a long day at work, if they're trying to unwind by doing their favorite hobby, like, there's all sorts of things they could be doing that if you walked up and just dropped a big, heavy, emotional conversation in their lap, they would not react well. They'd probably get defensive, or they'd withdraw, shut down, stonewall. and the outcome is not going to be positive. So one of the first and best things that you can do if there's an emotionally charged topic that you want to talk about with your partner is to start by asking for permission. The next thing I want to talk about is complaining without blaming. So there is a difference between Dr. Gottman's research has delineated a really clear difference between complaining and criticizing. When you criticize your partner, you're attacking their character, you make sweeping generalizations. It's typically, it feels like an affront, and it's not fun. Now, a complaint is not necessarily fun either, but a complaint is different in that it focuses on a specific incident, not like a generality. And typically there's emotions or feelings associated with that, how a certain circumstance impacted you, and there's a really high concentration of focus on the facts, on the facts of what happened. And so we're going to talk about a little bit about what it looks like to complain without blaming here. So I mentioned earlier, just a second ago, that it's good to start by talking about your feelings. So a lot of people have a very hard time identifying the emotions, the feelings that they're feeling. If we sat down and I were to ask you what are emotions, like could you name off a few of them? You'd probably say happy, sad, angry, disappointed, frustrated, confused. There's a lot of words that we can use to describe how we feel, but the temptation that we have when we're having a conversation like this is we avoid, oftentimes if we haven't been raised to and had a lot of practice identifying our feelings and communicating them to people, what we end up doing is we communicate our thoughts and our opinions and our kind of our perspective on the situation at hand. And so what I really want you to focus on doing is saying very clearly something like, I'm lonely, or I'm sad, I'm disappointed, I'm confused right now. And it's hard to do in the moment because it feels very vulnerable. But it's one of those really interesting things when you say your emotion out loud, your partner is way more likely to be empathetic to you and to get curious, as opposed to if you were to share a thought or an opinion, they were more likely to kind of get defensive. One of the great ways to avoid sharing a thought or an opinion instead of a feeling is avoid the word like when it comes with the word feel. So I think the biggest mistake that I see people make when they're trying to share their feelings is they say something like, I feel like you don't care about me. I feel like I can't trust you. I feel like you're always letting me down. I Those things are not feelings. Like, when was the last time you felt the feeling of you're letting me down? When somebody lets you down, you probably feel disappointed. Maybe you feel betrayed. So the feeling is different than the actual experience. I feel like you don't care about me. There is no such feeling. If you go look up feelings, you're never going to find the feeling you don't care about me. What you're going to find is something like, I feel abandoned. I feel neglected. I feel like I miss you. I feel distant. And the better you get at identifying those feelings, the less likely your partner is to get defensive. Because the moment they hear that accusation, that thought of you don't care about me, they're going to feel like they need to explain themselves. So that's a really great way to kind of keep the conversation on track and headed in a positive direction. And then the second thing to focus on when you're on this step is describing the actual facts of what happened without judging. So a lot of times our brains kind of like to embellish the facts a little bit. Maybe your partner says they're going to be home at 6:30 and they don't get home until 7:30 and they don't call, and it's really frustrating, and you're really upset because you had dinner ready and waiting on the table, and you can invent an entire story as to why they're late, and talk about how they're always so disrespectful. They're not courteous. They don't care about you and how you spend and how much time and effort you put into getting dinner ready, and how they're not worthy of trust, and how they always prioritize work over family. And you could make up this entire story and say that's what the problem is, but it's just going to make your partner defensive, and it's just going to result in a fight. So when you're bringing up a conflict conversation like this, a great thing to do is to focus on the facts and describe what happened without judging and say, hey, you committed to being home at 6:30 and you didn't get home till 7:30 and you didn't call in advance. I feel really, sad about that. I feel lonely. I'm feeling a little mistrusting right now. And I don't know what to do with that. Can we have a conversation about it? Way better result. You'll get a way better result from something like that than when your partner walks through the door and go, I can't believe you, you selfish SOB. I can't believe that you broke a promise again and you didn't even call. Were you with anyway, the accusations could start flying and it just goes in a really negative direction. The third thing that I want to focus on that helps with a soft startup is focusing on what you want. Very often when we have a concern that we want to bring up with our partner, our first instinct is to talk about all the things that they've done wrong. We want to talk about how they've disappointed us, how they've let us down, how they've hurt us, and focus on their defects and their imperfections and all of the things that they do wrong that make us miserable. And that is an unproductive way to start a conversation like this, because once again, it's just going to end up with your partner feeling like they need to defend themselves. It's going to get really emotional really fast, and it's going to go downhill from there. So one of the best things that you can do is stay focused on the future of what you want to see more of. So think, before you have a conversation with your partner, think, what is the ideal outcome? What do I want to have more of? I want to have more trust. I want to have more connection. I want to have more flirtation. I want to have more good sex. And before you start, I mean, you don't even have to accuse your partner or focus on the negative. Show up to the conversation and see if you can paint an amazing future that they can get on board with, and create a plan to create more of that future together. So if we want to go back, let's go back to the partner who got home late and missed dinner, and the partner's really upset. So I said partner a lot. I apologize. I know that can get really confusing, but I don't want to get gender normative because that can be really confusing. So, so partner one gets home late, partner and walks through the door, and partner number two could sit down and say, hey, you got home an hour later than we had planned. And that, like, it kind of broke my trust. I'm feeling a little betrayed here. I'm feeling like there's my like again. It creeps in. I want to be able to trust you. I want to be able to count on you. See, now we're focusing on the future. I want to know that when I really need you, you're going to be there for me. Can we talk about how we can make that happen so that I don't get, scared and nervous when you're late next time? Can we create a plan? And immediately, instead of focusing on why you're late, why you didn't show up, how you're disrespectful, we can skip over the past that we can't change and focus on the future, which is something that we can change, put a plan in place to create the type of relationship that we want to see more of. So if you can do those three things, you're going to be setting yourself up for success. Step number 4, express appreciation. Even if your partner hasn't done anything good, if they're just willing to sit down and have the conversation with you, just say thank you. Thank you for being willing to sit down and have this conversation with me. It means a lot. It means a lot that you care about how I feel or what I think about what's going on. It means a lot that you're invested, like I am, in making our relationship as good as it can be. And then the 5th thing is something that I'm going to dive into in more detail down the road. But it's don't store things up. So there's this really awesome principle called having a low negativity threshold, and we'll go into it in the next video. And it's really important to, some people say, let the little things go. It's not that big of a deal. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Pick your battles. However you want to say it. There's a lot of people who say not to make a big stink over little things in your relationship. And I'm here to tell you that that's very bad advice. And I'll tell you why in the next video. So make sure that you do not miss out on it. As a matter of fact, if it's already recorded, I will go ahead and link to it right over here. All right, guys, have an amazing, amazing day. And I hope that that this helps you have better, more constructive conflict conversations that are inevitable in every relationship. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave your favorite takeaways down in the comments.